All right, you guys, the last 2 days of the week for our first week in world history is going to focus on the rule of European leaders called absolutism. And absolutism is a way of ruling where every aspect of people's lives is controlled by their leader to the best of their ability, and they have absolute power. And so they can change the rules, there's no written constitution to control them, and so they can do almost anything they want. You're going to be looking at these documents that talk about the aspects of absolutism and also give you examples of ways in which leaders were absolutists. You've already heard my lecture where I talked to you about absolutism. So this one, document 2, is about how Louis XIV, kept his nobles in order. But one of the aspects of absolutism you're going to see is like control of nobility. You're also going to see that absolutists have a tendency to be focused on war. In order to maintain their power, they seem to have a tendency to fight others, and that strengthens them. So you see a focus on that. You also see in Russia controlling of the nobles, as well as this table of ranks that was created in 1722. And this was supposed to make it so the nobility lost power by giving other people of all ranks of life, not just nobility, access to some jobs. So it says here that it imposed required lifelong state service of all nobility. It established different grades in the military and required even the princes of the most exalted families to work their way up the ladder. So again, controlling the nobility is a very important way to strengthen their power. So you've got some additional documents here all about different leaders. And then what you're going to want to do is you're going to be going to, on your last day, the assessment. So this is all classwork. But eventually you're going to get to the assessment, which is an important part of your grade, where you're going to show me that you understand absolutism. So this is what the assessment page looks like. You have a link to those DBQ documents, but you can also use information from your the lecture that you watched about England and Russia and France, and then any information you learned from your reading. So what we're going to do is focus on the introduction paragraph. And an introduction paragraph has contextualization or background. That's why we learned a little bit about feudalism and some of the other ways of leading in these different, maybe non-European countries like the gunpowder empires. So that gives us context. What were leaders like during this time or just before the time period of absolutism? And then you are going to make a thesis statement where you describe how European leaders were absolutist, and like in what ways, so that if you were going to eventually go write an essay, which you're not going to do right now, you would have a paragraph about maybe they control religion. So you'd have a paragraph about how absolutists like to control religion. Or maybe you'd have a paragraph about how absolutists are warlike. And you'd have examples. So what we want to do is prep for that essay that we're not going to write, but we could write if we had the time. So you need to write your own contextualization, but I give you an example here, and then I want you to go into your own. So I say something like, feudalism was a system of ruling where local lords would employ knights to protect their territory, and serfs would work the land with little opportunity at escape. While the lords had great power, it was only over a small area. As feudalism began to decline in the 1600s, European leaders attempted to strengthen their power and expand their territory, looking more like the sultans of the Ottoman Empire. So that's all context for then what I'm going to get into, which would be my thesis statement. And if I wasn't writing this with room for you, it would all kind of squish together. So then my thesis statement would come directly after that, because I'm talking about strengthening the power. And I would say centralizing power, prohibiting religious freedom, and the overspending were common characteristics of absolutist leaders in the 17th century. So I'm talking about how the government changed. Now, I might want to add a sentence and say something like, European rulers, as they attempted to look more like their Ottoman counterparts, found that centralizing power, prohibiting religious freedom, and often overspending were the best ways to rule. That could be my statement. So again, you're going to do context. It's going to be in your own words, and then you're going to attempt to write what you think would be a good thesis statement. And what I want you to do is smush it all together in one paragraph. So in a paragraph, what do you do? The first line, you would indent, undo. Apparently, if you indent with the tab on it, it actually makes a new row. So you're just going to push in a little bit with your space bar. You're going to start writing your paragraph. And your intro paragraph starts with context and then ends with the thesis statement for your whole essay. And that's all you're going to do, and then you're going to submit it. So hopefully this will help you to be a little more successful at the end of this week.